G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it.
Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Andrew May of Strive Stronger, and Andrew's based in Sydney, Australia. Today we're going to be discussing managing energy and high-performing teams. So thanks for your time, mate.
Good to see you. I met you many years ago when I lived in Hobart, Tasmania, when I started my very first small business over 20 years ago, Michael. So it's lovely to reconnect.
Well, you know what? It's probably close to 30 years possibly, but anyway, time flies. And
actually, it is. I had a major milestone recently. You reminded me on my disconnect and the disillusion I have with time. So thank you for reminding me. Yes, it was 30 years ago.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're all getting older, but it's all about health and well-being, right? So it's no doubt part of your conversation. So as I said, we're going to be talking about managing energy and high-performing teams. So maybe just give us a bit of an insight into that topic to kick things off.
Yeah, to start, the teams I work with, I run a business called Strive Stronger. We're a boutique wellbeing consultancy. We're building a digital business to help people measure and improve their physical and psychological wellbeing. So that's a large part of my day-to-day job. Hat number 2 is I work around mental skills. I'm a mental skills coach for Manly Sea Eagles, the mighty Manly Sea Eagles. I work with a bunch of athletes, a number of world champions as well in sport.
And for sorry, mate, and I was just going to say for those people overseas, that's a rugby league competition.
A rugby league team, yes, thank you.
Yes.
That's all about helping athletes. I talk about the third tier. So number 1, you can train your craft. And this applies as well to small business. So you can train your job, what you do. I'm not here today for that. 2, you can train your body. We know you can get fitter, faster, stronger. You've got to do reps and sets. 3, you can totally train mental skills, but you've got to do reps and sets in a non-pressurized environment. So you can front load or draw on those skills when you need it most. So the first head is running my own business. So I totally get the trials, the tribulations, the joy and the challenges of running a small business. 2 is I work with a number of sporting teams and athletes. And number 3 is I have a podcast as well called Performance Intelligence, where I'm blessed to interview a bunch of high performers in business, sport, media, entertainment and science, and really pulling on the thread what helps them sustain performance. So really it's every part of my waking day, thinking, living, breathing, working, consulting, reflecting on how do we build high performance.
Yeah, that's great. And certainly a shout out on your podcast. I'm an avid listener and love the content and the way you go about it. So well done on that.
Yeah, thank you, mate. And just to throw a bit of controversy in for your listeners today as well, I'm going to challenge both of us on the term high performance. I think we wax lyrical, this term, they're a high performing team. And I've been doing keynote speaking now, for nearly 20 years. And the amount of times I've had a brief and Andrew, we've got a high performing team, or they want me to do a presentation, Michael, on the high performing teams. And then they'll go and say, well, we've had a really high turnover. We're not hitting our sales margins. The engagement surveys are really poor. And one of the leaders just left because he or she was sleeping with somebody else. But we're a high-performing team. This conversation actually happened. I went, you're calling yourself, but this is not a high-performing team. This is a toxic waste dump. So let's delineate between results and between the behaviours that underpin that. So I think a sustainable high-performing team has both and has a really strong culture where people feel they can express themselves. You can have a conversation and pull someone up in a psychologically safe environment. So we're not peeing in each other's pockets and this passive-aggressive, oh, Mark, yeah, that's great. And then you walk away and I stab the living daylights out of you and you're back. But you have the conversation on the spot. Hey, mate, you're stuffed up. Can you do this next time? Or I'm really annoyed you did this. And you do it immediately. So you have that culture. Or also you have the physiological background so people understand, well, we're talking about today how to manage energy, but also how to restore energy. And you then just have a team where people learn, grow, develop, and results. So that's the 2. That to me is a high-performing team. Not, hey, we get results, but we work with a bunch of toxic arseholes.
I totally agree. I'm of the same opinion. And I just hate the term high performance because I think it just can bring the wrong connotations depending on the circumstances, but more or less. So with sort of managing energy, what are some I guess, initiatives for small business owners that you'd suggest?
Yeah, I'll give a framework first, and then I'll give you some really
Okay.
practical tips, because energy can be this esoteric, yeah, hey, on Moonbeam, go to Byron Bay for our overseas listeners. That's where there's a few hippies there, that maybe having a few other substances that, that we don't recommend. If I look at the science of energy, you've got physical energy, one, you've got psychological and emotional energy, two, and three, there is a social energy. Physical energy is the big three. It's how you move, physical activity. It's how you fuel, so it's nutrition, and also not having too much sugar, making sure your body's not in inflammation, cutting back on the alcohol. Sorry, I have to talk about that, Michael. If you're serious about running a small business and you're drinking every night and think that's part of a sustainable performance environment, killing yourself. And the third one there as well is that whole sleep and recovery. And I'm sure you've spoken a lot about that, but just as a framework, like every day, some of the practical parts. And I work with a lot of small business owners. You've got to get 10,000 steps. That just wakes your mitochondria up to get your body moving. They're these energy cells in our body. And get it throughout the day. Don't just exercise in the morning and then do nothing all day. Try and move intermittently throughout the day. But I'm too busy, Michael. I hear some of your listeners saying,
Yeah.
I get it. I'm busy. I've also got 4 kids to throw on top of all that, and I have to practice everything I talk about. Otherwise, I go home and I bring my best to clients, and I don't bring my best at home, and I get feedback about that, Michael. So build movement into your day, and also sleep and recovery is a huge one. Now, I've been there when you're scaling a business. When we went through COVID, my business, we lost 90% of revenue. So there was a period for 6 months where it was just survival. And I had to pull back, because when you get really stressed, we do more work thinking we're going to get better results, but there is a law of diminishing returns. So for most people, aim to get 7 hours of restorative sleep a night. 8 hours is a myth. Hardly anyone gets 8. Get the amount of sleep where you wake up feeling refreshed, recharged, ready to go. Some people it's 5. Some it's 8, for most it's about 7. Also, as small business owners, get off your technology before you go to bed. If I know that you're texting, tweeting, Tindering on your device before you go to sleep, metaphorically, I want to give you a headbutt, because that wakes up your sympathetic nervous system. So switch off the technology 30 minutes before you go to bed. So there's some basic tips around physical energy and obvious nutrition. I'd get most small business owners to at least have 3 or 4 alcohol-free days, AFDs, on school nights, so you're waking up fresh. Those 3 components tying together. Move more. And notice I'm not saying extreme exercise, becoming a freak. No, just move, day-to-day movement. Make sure you're recovering and get good nutrition. So they're the basics on physical. Let's move to psychological and emotional. I'm sure you've had this, Michael. When you're closing deals, when life's good at home, when you feel physically energized, psychologically, you've got more buffer. You can handle more. You're more resilient. But when you're tired and fatigued and distracted and your backside's hanging out, that psychological energy drops. They are totally interconnected. The one really big factor, it's a 10x factor that gives you more psychological and emotional energy, is being on purpose. So actually working, or if you're not getting it at work, supplementing outside, because you don't just have to get it at work, but making sure there is a big part of your life, work or outside, that is aligned to your purpose. Because the research on this, it's really clear. 3 components. Having a clearly articulated purpose. 1, it's going to help you make more money. 2, it's going to help you bounce back from adversity. You're going to have more resilience. And 3, you're actually going to live longer. So I don't see any reason why you wouldn't clearly articulate your purpose. And that's more than just reading a book or doing a podcast. It takes about 3 or 4 months of really digging deep and doing your personal purpose. I had a coach, a great guy I still work with, named Richard Burton. I'll give you his details, and he'd be a good one for you to interview, to talk about how you get a clear personal purpose. Burdo did that with me. And
good one.
if you build on that, you've got the physical energy, you've got the psychological energy, which builds from physical, and then the purpose is like your compass that really directs you in the right area. And the third one is social. Now, there is some research behind this. It's called it's called emotional contagion theory, which has shown that how a leader turns up, so how a small business owner turns up, has this ripple effect with your team. If you turn up Oh, I'm tired. I've had a shit night. Oh, God, it's hard at the moment. Oh, we're facing headwinds with the economic market. Oh, look at what's happening over in the Ukraine. Oh, look at what's happening with funding and interest. Like that has a ripple effect. So how you show up as a leader definitely is important. So all those three can make a big difference. The physical, the big three, your psychological and emotional, and then that ripple effect you have throughout an organization. I could talk about this for an hour, so I'll just wrap it up there.
Yeah, and having a conversation not dissimilar with many business over the years. Yeah, the immediate response, I'm too busy for that shit.
Find it hard to define a clear strategy, then communicate it and execute it alongside the rest of your team? Or you currently don't work a simple quarterly strategic plan to boost your team's performance? Our Business Growth Formula online course is perfect for small business owners with 5 to 30 team members wanting to grow. We share the mindsets, habits and tools to be a legendary leader in your business. growsmallbusiness.com.
So, and a lot of them would say, yeah, that makes sense. So is there sort of one or two tips to kick things off, to start to put those things in place? And I'd imagine it's sort of, you don't need to change your life totally. It's just baby steps. And so in that context, what are those sort of first baby steps, if you like?
The very first step is probably not what you think. It's not building more energy. It's actually looking at where are you draining energy. And it's getting back in control of your central nervous system. So I call this breaking up with busyness. So whether it's a small business owner or a CEO of a large bank or some of the top 30 ASX CEOs that I work with, number one, it's the relationship with their central nervous system. How are you, Michael? Oh, I'm busy. Oh, I've got so much on. Like we wear busyness like a badge. So every time people listening to this, when they're asked, how are you going? And that default is, oh, I'm so busy. Just go, bad answer. What do I say? So look, I'm being stretched at the moment. I've got a lot on. There's some really exciting opportunities. Just that language, I'm so busy, it weighs us down. And then it becomes dichotomous. So, either or. I'm either really busy or I've got time to exercise. And that's a limiting story. So it's and. Look, I've got a lot on and I'm still going to find some time to exercise and spend time with my family and so on, so on, and so on. So the very first tip, Michael, is we've got to get people to downregulate and stop being hijacked by the central nervous system. So it's that sympathetic nervous system. Go, 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 go. That's a lot of small business owners. I get it. You think there's never any time. You probably think I've got rocks in my head, but just try it. Because if you do what you're doing and expect a different result, what's that saying? If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So change that relationship with your central nervous system first and challenge the notion about being busy.
Yep. That was Einstein's definition of madness, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And then two, I'd go those three big physical boosters. I'd move a little bit more, get the 10,000 steps. I'd look at the nutrition and I'd cut out sugar. I'd cut back on alcohol and get the good macronutrients. Yeah. Steak and 3 veg, we should go back to that and just have performance carbs rather than pasta. So brown rice or legumes, and then look at some of that recovery. They're the 2 steps. Break up with busyness and then really focus on that physical energy.
Yeah, no, some good tips. And I think it's just trying to put those, I guess, discipline into your life. And I think I can talk from when I first met you many years ago. I've, continued to go to the gym. It's in my diary. I do not sacrifice that for anything. Yes, there might be occasions with emergencies, obviously, and it's been a big part of my life. And as we get older, it becomes even more important, doesn't it? So
you were one of the original guinea pigs back then, Michael, and you're still standing, so it must have worked.
So far, so good.
I'll give you a third one because you've led me there. And you were really part of the original gang of business owners in Hobart I worked with many years ago. I'm very grateful for the opportunities you and a number of other people gave me. But the third one, lock it in your diary. And I have a construct that I've been teaching for over a decade called the Better Week. And you lock in exercise, you lock in time with your kids or your partner and lock in some time for interest. And you do that first. Oh my God, people are switching off in droves now. He said to downregulate your central nervous system as a small business owner. And now he's saying lock stuff in your diary. This shit's not going to happen. Well, it's not unless you prioritize it. So just put 1 or 2 activities in your diary for you each week. And then that becomes your default behavior. You're actually habit stacking and putting activities. So I'm a bit weird, as you know. I love exercise. I exercise every day. That's in my diary. And you just do it, mate. And so even when you travel, it just becomes part of your DNA. And I need a lot of energy to run 2 businesses and to have 4 kids. I have to practice this stuff because it gives me an edge. And if I don't do it, like everyone else, and end of last year, I really wasn't going to the well and renewing, restoring, recharging as much. And I really felt it towards the end of the year. I had a good break and come back and reset. So it's not like you do this and do it forever. I teach it. You've got to constantly come back. What's working, what's not, go back to the basic building blocks.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like you say, it's we've all got this 24 hours in a day. It's a matter of what you prioritise. And if you don't look after yourself, then you can't look after anybody else. And good tips there, mate. So have you got maybe a story or two to share with our sort of small business owners around this that sort of provide a bit more context?
I have got one, and I've got permission to share this because during COVID, I mentioned before, we've lost over 90% of our revenue. And then we had a wonderful opportunity with NAB, working with the Small Business Bank, to put a podcast and a digital platform together. It was called NAB Business Fit, and that was made available to all NAB banking customers, first of all, and then they made that available to the open market. So we had tens of thousands of people downloading our resources, listening to the podcast, which was great for us, like from a business point of view, but we were living, breathing it. So I think it really captured the pulse of what business owners were going through. A story from that experience is Christy, who had a donut business, and her and her husband also had a cafe. She was getting about 4 or 5 hours sleep. She was working where we are in our hub here at Working in Lavender Bay in Sydney. And Angela, who I work with in Strive Stronger, saw Christy in the coffee shop. Quick conversation. Christy said, I see you doing all this recording and podcasting. What are you doing? And she explained that business fit. Christy went, oh my goodness, I need that. And then we worked with Christy behind the scenes. And Ange did a few coaching sessions. Anyway, long story short, 6 months later, they sold the coffee shop. That wasn't our coaching. I think it was just a realization. You can do a good job on a few things. You can't do everything. And then they really focused on their donut business. And last I knew, that had gone 4 to 5 times multiple on revenue on what they were previously doing, because they found a niche in the market and then really focused on that rather than doing donuts and a coffee shop, and you're tired of not making the right decisions. So that was a great example where, if we go back to the framework I gave you, number one, Christy and her husband, which is a business partner, had to change their relationship with their central nervous system. They had to stop just spinning the wheels all the time. They were going to burn out. You cannot sustain on sort of 3-4 hours sleep for years and years and just being stressed the whole time. And this is why I love that I still get that opportunity in sport, because, you know, sport, Hobart, for any of your Tasmania listeners, you've got an AFL team coming in.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
About time, Michael.
Absolutely.
But elite athletes train hard and they recover hard. Train hard, recover hard. That's your whole year. And they have a good off season. Small business owners train hard. They work hard, they work hard, they work hard, and they expect to get better results with no recovery. So Christy and her husband were a great example. They changed the relationship with their central nervous system. They started to bring in a few activities to energize themselves. And 6 months later, they're doing 4 to 5 times revenue because they actually focused on the core product, which was a real point of difference.
Yeah. And I assume part of that was they created more energy as a result of what they put in place.
Energize themselves, energize the team, energize the brand, energize the market. So as a small business owner, it's an inside job. You can't expect to download. I have a fundamental dislike of the word hack. So, Michael, give me a hack to give me all this energy. Such thing as a bloody hack. It is tap into your physiology, which hasn't changed our wiring for thousands of years. We know how it works. It's an inside-out job. Then work on the mindset, and you'll be surprised, 3 months, 6 months down the track, what a difference that makes, rather than we try the shortcut Band-Aid approach that doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a very good tip and insight. So we could talk all day about this, particularly sort of with sport and business, and I guess you gave a good analogy. So to wrap things up, what's, say, one thing our listeners you think should do after listening to this podcast to get them on track with creating more energy?
That's a tough question because I could give you multiple answers.
I know it's multiples, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the one big one?
I'll file it down to one. As a small business owner, if you look at your organization chart, you're often the CEO, the CFO, the head of marketing. You go to Office Works or the stationery store to get the supplies. You do the proposals, you do the sales, you're everything. So I'll come back to the theme of what we've spoken about today. The number one thing your listeners can take away is to focus on their energy. But this is not what people will think. It's not what you do. It's not upregulating. Small business owners have no problem at all upregulating, to get going, to get up. The number one tip, Michael, is to get people to downregulate. So periodically, building in periods like Christy and her husband with the donut business to downregulate. And from a science point of view, that involves two different factors. Number one, you're switching from stress or sympathetic to recovery or parasympathetic. Your heart rate drops, your breathing slows down, the release of insulin and cortisol into your bloodstream stops, your muscles relax. So it's the that's the physical recovery. And the second part, and we measure this in our lab, and you can do it through technology called Muse, where we can see people's brainwave patterns. And when you upregulate, you're always there thinking, you're in beta, you're making decisions, it's go, go, go. But shifting down and regulating, you're getting your body to relax or parasympathetic, and you're getting your brain to go alpha. Now, when your brain goes alpha, I'll give you an example. I call it the 5 Bs. And it's what small business owners don't do when we're stressed out and we answer everything with a default, I'm busy. So the 5 Bs are, you have your best ideas, your creative breakthroughs when you're on a bus, when you're riding a bike, when you're reading a book, when you're sitting at the beach, or you're having a bath without a mobile phone, because you're stopping that chatter and allowing your subconscious, all those brainwaves, to get into alpha. And then you come up with different ideas, what to do for staff, recruitment, culture, market penetration, marketing. So the answer, and I've given you a bit of science, but to really drill down, as a small business owner, the number one factor I tell people to do is to downregulate both the body and the brain.
Yeah, I like it. And I get it as a bike rider. I certainly, when I go on bike rides by myself, certainly it's a good time to think about your business and what you're doing in the bigger picture. So certainly get that. So, mate, appreciate your time. As I say, could talk all day, and I'm sure our listeners will get a lot of good tips, and hopefully they put in place from here. So thanks, mate.
Awesome. Thanks for reaching out. You do a great job with the podcast. And yeah, my final message for people is, when you first put these practices into place, I get it. It is difficult because it's challenging the whole wiring. And we know that with neuroscience, you get these mental patterns. And even if they're not sustaining you, even if they're not high performance in inverted commas, it's your natural pathway. You're used to doing it. It takes time to unpick those pathways and form new neural pathways. Give it 2 or 3 months. And I guarantee, hand on my heart, putting these principles into practice, because it's not just science. I've been doing this stuff for, as you said, 30 plus years.
Yeah.
It just works, and you've got to have these building blocks in.
Yeah. But as you say, you need to give it at least 3 or 4 months. It's not just a silver bullet, right? So you've got to be consistent.
Whoever said behavior change takes 21 days to have a good talking to. You know, some people are trying to change behavior for 21 years, Michael. It really does. It takes a good 3 to 4 months to embed behavior change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll look, just to close, in addition to our podcast for listeners, I certainly recommend them start listening, if they don't already, to your podcast, Performance Intelligence. Certainly I'm an avid listener and get a lot out of it. So yeah, thank you for your contribution to everybody you touch.
Thank you for that, mate. We have a lot of small business owners listen, and even if the topic is not specific to running a small business all the time, we go into cold water therapy, the use of sauna, fasting, nutrition profiles, time management, productivity, a lot of those principles I've been talking about. We do a deep dive. So yeah, I'd love your listeners to jump on and they can do a deep dive.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, mate.
Cheers, Michael.
See ya.
And for our audience, we'd greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.